Je crois que vous êtes les unes et les autres prêts à décoller puisque notre prochaine destination, c'est le New Space. Un New Space qui se caractérise par la combinaison de plusieurs éléments, l'ouverture du marché à de nouveaux acteurs du secteur privé, entraînant une révolution de collaboration historique avec ces nouveaux entrants. Vous me direz, évidemment, si je me trompe, c'est ce dont nous allons parler. On va vous écouter surtout. Le développement des technologies innovantes et l'évolution du business model associé qui fait bouger les lignes. Et enfin, une forte dynamique d'investissement et de soutien financier avec une typologie d'investisseurs qui s'est un petit peu diversifiée. Alors, qu'en est-il à l'échelle européenne? Quels sont les défis de l'Europe? J'en dis pas plus, je vous invite à regagner la scène et je vous cède la parole.
This conference will be in English language because we are welcoming Colonel Sir Buijus. I don't know if I pronounce correct. I'm delighted to handle this panel about the new space issues with the defense and strategy problems in the space domain. So to introduce this context, we saw in February 2022 that Ukraine, a state without space capabilities, has been able to rent space assets to new enterprises like OneWeb, Telsat, but also Starlink. So we will ask around this panel about these issues in the space domain. So I'm pleased to welcome first Nathalie Tinjod. You work at the European Space Agency. You are the head of ESA Historic Project. You work also in international relations as an international relations counselor specialized about Eastern Europe and now Indo-Pacific questions. And then Colonel Bernard Buijus, you are the you are a former fighter test pilot, I think, fighter test pilot in the Air Force of the Royal Netherlands Air Force, and you are now the command of the Space Department in this country. And then Colonel Noel Farnault, French officer in the Air and Space Force. You are the chief of staff of the French Space Command now. So to begin, I'm pleased to ask to Mrs. Tinjod. You told me you were at Singapore last week for an international conference. Can you tell us about European Space Agency adaptation to the new space context? And is it an Occidental trend, or could we see this evolution in other countries in the world?
Thank you very much. So since I'm the first one to speak, maybe I can say a few things about new space itself. So the first thing is that, like the title of this conference is Europe at the Crossroad, I would say new space is also really much at the crossroad at the moment. It's ESA is 50 years this year, and we could be then considered as old space, but new space is as old, almost as old as ESA, in fact, because it's the measure that were taken by Ronald Reagan quite some years ago in the 80s that paved the way for the new space that emerged afterwards, thanks to the involvement in space of what we call now the super empowered individual. And what is happening in the US at the moment is really something that questions new space very much. So but we can come back to this afterwards. So about the definition, it's problematic in Europe because it brings a lot of of nonsense and misperception. And for example, one of those is that for many years we've been talking about privatization of space because of this super empowered individual. But now we know that a lot of development in the US were made and paid by NASA. In fact, even if the development is due to Elon Musk. So there's still a lot of public investment in this. So we do not name it really privatization any longer, but more commercialization. And commercialization is as old as ESA because Arianespace was created just after the first launch of Ariane. And so already we are commercializing the launch services since the beginning by a private actor with public money as well, but okay. And so what is that? There's a lot of other nonsense. For example, there was the idea that there was a huge market for space services, which appears not to be really the case in all segments of space. So that's another nonsense that is today very well seen by all the actors. It's also the dividing concept, as I mentioned. It's gives the impression that there is an old space that is not working properly, and a new space that is inventing everything, innovating, and spending less money in doing everything. So this is wrong. This is wrong as well. And the reason why I'm saying it is that we've heard a lot yesterday about strategic autonomy, and at the core of strategic autonomy, there is industry, and this is very, very much important today, not to endanger the traditional, the legacy industry by funding a lot of let's say, new space undertakings. So it's very important to be concentrated on needs and products more than on who is doing what. And this is something, since we have colleagues from Europe, I want to say, very, very often we ask ourselves the wrong question, that is, who should do what? And then we talk about geo-return. And the question is never who should do what. The question is, what do we want to do together? So what do we want to achieve? And then whether it's done through a way or the other, it doesn't matter. It's what we want to achieve. So ESA has embarked in commercialization. The Director General, Joseph Aschbacher, in his Agenda 25, decided to open ESA to commercialization and to change the approach, basically, because it's core to new space, the approach to competitiveness, the approach to industrialization, and the approach to cost effectiveness. So we have taken a lot of measures to help to support the startup, to support the SMEs, while still working with the traditional actors. So we have a program for that. We have a director for that. So we embarked in the train, and we are how to say, monitoring the policy. We are evaluating it and adapting it to what is changing. And as I mentioned, a lot is changing now. So what we prefer in ESA is not to talk about new space any longer, but to talk about next space. And we have a next Ariane. We have a next space as well.
Okay, thank you very much for this interesting explanation. I will remember that the European countries are more than ever conscious of the issues of being a competitive players in the space domain, and that new space is not a miracle or the only solution to every problem in the space domain. So I'm very happy to talk to Sir Colonel Buijus. Thank you for being with us today. Could you give us an overview about your missions at the Royal Netherlands Air Forces and how the Space Department is is constituted and evolving to this new context in the new space.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's my pleasure to do so. And about the introduction, my background is an aerospace engineer, and I worked for years in flight test as a flight test engineer. And the flight test engineer is more or less the same, because we're testing the weapon system towards the operational requirements, and that in space is not anything different. And but after my flight test career ended with the F-35, I have also space engineering on my diploma. So the Air Force said, oh, start with space. And we really started with nothing. My first assignment in 2016 was plan for our general, General Snitger. And he said, Bernie, new space is going to change the world. And we are doing nothing because we do not have a task from our Chief of Defense, because there is no budget. But I have a vision that it will change the world in the coming years. So Bernie, you have a small amount of money, $3 million euros, and prove that we can build a small satellite with the relevant military payloads, using the ecosystem we have in the Netherlands, because the Netherlands has the advantage that Aztec is over there. Aztec had a lot of spin-off, so ESA technology is also commercialized in the Dutch space industry around Noordwijk. And we have a university, and we have our national research labs. So in this ecosystem, I was challenged to build this satellite. And that resulted in the Brick 2, which is a very small 10U satellite with 3 payloads. It was launched in, actually almost 4 years ago. We launched it at Virgin Orbit to also demonstrate responsive launch capability, because that's also part of the military concept, to have rapidly access to space. We did it at Virgin, but unfortunately the concept went broke. But nevertheless, we learned a lot of lessons from this. Actually, this successful demonstration showed that we have the industry, the knowledge, and small budgets. So we have traditional space with SATCOM, which we are doing for 30 years, but we have that completely isolated in our organization. So with this successful demonstration, we finally got space introduced in our defense bill, and finally formalized a small task, a starting point to develop a space organization and budget to develop more space capabilities. And that is not the kind of money that we can immediately buy geostationary satellites. It is just continue the way we started in the new space options we have. So how do we do the planning then for that kind of capabilities? We are reassessing our tasks in the NATO force model and our regional plans. So we're going to look, what is our Navy going to do, what is our Army going to do, and what is our Air Force going to do, and do we still have, in the context of today, the space support that we need to execute those missions. That also means that the brothers in arms who we fight those tasks are also the first interesting partners, as strategic partners, to develop those space capabilities. Because we are operating in the same area, we need the same capabilities, and we're looking at those capabilities. It's not only ISR, it is also it includes SATCOM, it includes also space domain awareness, it includes all pilots of the space domain for the warfighter, as written down in the NATO space policy. And except for the NATO force model, we also have our national defense plan. And I think our minister was already very clear during the European Space Conference that he also said, okay, if the enemy is using space against us as well, we also need to see how we defend our capabilities, and even how we we obstruct the operation of adversary satellites to prevent they use their satellites for the kill chain. So we have actually developed, we are a small organization. I forgot to tell you that with our small, we are now only 25 people, because that's a good starting point, and from there we are now architecturing our organization. It will be run under the wings of the Air Force, but I have Navy guys and Army guys in my team to serve all branches and make sure that all missions that we are planning in the NATO force model are supported by the required space capabilities. And so we have 3 lines of effort. We make use of our own ecosystem, where we build our own satellites, and then we're specifically looking at electro-optical satellites, hyperspectral satellites, and we look at the laser communication because we need that inter-satellite link, because we need to bring space to the tactical level, and therefore we need to have the data as soon as we can. I'll come back to that later. And the other one is like by multilateral partnerships. For example, the SATCOM, we are for years a strong partner with the American SATCOM providers. And of course, we're now also looking what the SAS in Luxembourg can provide us, and we just signed the MGS sharing agreement from Luxembourg together with the Americans to have that availability of MEO SATCOM capability as well. But of course, we're also looking at commercial providers. And buying data, just data product service, is very limited. It's under restriction of some national regulations of the providers. So it's very hard to get assured access to those data products. But there are also companies that actually are building your satellite and deliver it in space. And like ISI, they are selling their satellites in space. And that provides us with SAR capability. So we've felt the urgency to accelerate our capabilities. And it's not 100% answer to all our military needs, but about 80% of our military requirements. So actually we just signed a contract to buy those SAR satellites. And we are launching in June, just to accelerate through the commercial market with all the challenges that are there, because that's a valid point. But at least we have some sovereign capability starting this summer after the launch. And I have to admit that the innovation and the acceleration in the new space, I'm impressed by it. You mentioned some concerns about it, but I'm pretty impressed about the new generations and what's developing. And if we have a good conversation with the industry, they start listening to your military requirements as well. So that is how we really follow those commercial providers and our own industry to accelerate those capabilities, because the advantage of satellites in low Earth orbit that every 3 years you have to replace them. You can apply new technology using Moore's law that has been doubled at least. So getting assets in space is not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is getting space to the tactical level. And that means that you have to, I already mentioned it, the satellite links. How do we bring space to the operator? If we see a target, it's time sensitive, it's time critical. How does the operator know that it's a threat or a target? Or how do we assess that the target was successfully eliminated? So space becomes part of the find, fix, track, assess and cycle, or in short, the kill chain. So that is also why we need to have full control over this whole system as the military, because it's part of the military operation and we're strongly dependent on it. But we need to have an architecture, how this is done. Like the Americans have the proliferated space warfighter architecture, we need to have similar capabilities, how we connect satellites through that transport layer to the operator. And sensor to shooter, in short. And I know at this moment we use the commercial networks, like KSAT, that are available. But we really, that's for the coming 5 years, that will be the quick solution. But we need to build together some kind of European architecture, how national sovereign capabilities can connect to that architecture layer and bring your data on a secure way towards the operator. And in full control of the military operation, because we cannot just wait for another organization to approve the data access or any capability or bandwidth availability. It must be assured for all the areas where we will be operating. So I think I can, so that's the most complex one, because we have all kinds of questions. We start with small architecture with inter-satellite links, so we have a small national network. It should be compatible with the SDA from the American standard, but we should all do the same, so at least we can connect the national capabilities to each other, because the sum of all national capabilities is not the total that we, NATO or Europe, need to, for security and, more important, to defend Europe. So we really need to work together on this architecture from the very beginning, because if you have a clear picture of that architecture, then we can build it together and we can concentrate the efforts. So it's a big elephant. How do we eat it? Just piece by piece. So we need to see who wants to enjoy dinner and start eating and building that common architecture for Europe.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Okay, thank you. It's very interesting to hear about a kind of new construction of the Space Department and its evolution to a Space Command, as I hear, because of the huge military utilization in the operations, but also because of new threats in the space domain, I think. So, Colonel Farnault, you work at the CDE as at the French Space Command as a Chief of Staff. Thank you for being with us. How does the Space Command face to this new context, the new space context, but also the new threatening context in the space domain?
Hello everybody, I'm Colonel Farnault. So first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this very serious topic, which is space defense and a timely topics for European at the present moment. So first of all, to start, let me quote Mr. Buijus, who said, there is no defense without space, and there is no space without defense. One thing is clear, space is no more a permissive environment, and that needs to be clear for everybody. This is the reason why in 2018, President Macron declared space as the fifth warfighting domain. In 2019, we decided to launch the space defense strategy with the major goal of maintaining access and action in space, following four main line of action. The first one is to take into account these new threats, enacting the concept of active defense. The second one was the creation of the French Space Command to gather all the initiatives related to space and to gain synergies. The third one was multiply and improve the relationship either with industry but also with partners and allies. And the fourth one is how to foster innovation and how to rethink and rebuild our industrial model to deal with this topic. And this is the reason why we are here today. What is the industrial model to deal with conflictuality in space and the importance of space inside the operation? So that brings me to my second point, which is relationship with industry. Where are we today at the French Space Command? There is a kind of tendency to always oppose, I would say, new space and legacy space or old space, call it whatever you want. In the French space domain, we think that we need and we have to work either with new space and with old space. Last week, we sent into orbit CSO-3 with Ariane 6. You probably noticed that. That is a very huge success for France and for Europe. But let me tell you, to send a highly sophisticated asset like that, highly resilient, with very huge performance, you need the expertise of the industry. And this is a part of our sovereignty. You need to be resilient, you need performance, because you need accurate intel to plan and to conduct a military operation. And really, this is a part of our sovereignty, of the French sovereignty, but this is also a part of the European sovereignty to have a free access to space. And I'm not sure that today, new space is able to build and to send into orbit this kind of a very neat asset. But on the other hand, we also have to quickly increase our capabilities while being very cost efficient. And new space is more able to do that because they are more flexible, they are more reactive, they have different process, and they are more cost effective, for example. There is one topic or one domain in which we deeply work with a new space or with a new industry. This is the intel and buying commercial imagery, because most of the time even for operation, we don't need to have very accurate pictures or very accurate intel, but we need to have timely intel. If you need to start the operation at 10 a.m., if the picture arrives at 11, this is too late. But you don't have to have an intel very accurate at 10 centimeters, but you need to have the correct intel at the good moment. And sometimes this is enough, and sometimes you need very neat intel to plan and to plan your operation. But when you command and when you conduct your operation, you need reactivity. When you use a commercial asset, you also have to recognize, identify, and mitigate the risk. Commercial providers, they may be unable or unwilling to deliver services, and this is the reason why we need to keep sovereign assets. We obviously, and this is a part of the strategy, what is the trade-off between commercial services that we buy and the trade-off with the capabilities that you keep? You need to keep a full control in it. So there is a correct balance, and this is always a matter of trade-off between performances, obviously prices, and the reactivities that you need. And all this trade-off rely on something which is paramount to me. This is trust, because we need to build trust. The French Space Command is actively working on this topic. We have created what we call a circle of trust, which is a forum that we build where we gather the forces and the industry to share topics outside of any contractual any contract, because trust is paramount when it's about operation. I would say that industry, they take risks when they develop or build a capability. The forces, they take risks at war. So basically, when you buy something, it needs to work. When you push on the start button, you cannot take risk anymore, because you will take risk at war. In space, the risk is a little bit different because you won't lose anybody. But if you lose an asset in space, you will lose people on the ground. So we need a resilience, and this is very paramount. New space can take risks when they build the systems. We will take risks after, but we need to have systems that will work at the correct moment. And this is the reason why trust is very important to build outside of any contract. For example, when we train, we have a space training exercise. We build and we try to integrate as much as we can industry inside the planification of the operation and in the command of the operation. This is something which is quite new that we do at Asterix, that you probably know, which is the Spain-France exercise. We have a dedicated team of industry that is fully integrated in all the planning. And this is during this kind of event that we build the trust that is required for the space command. So, what are now the main challenges that we can identify? Innovation. Innovation is the key challenge. This is not only a buzzword. This is a factor of operational sovereignty, but it also brings challenges for the forces. The first challenges that I can identify is to follow the pace of innovation, because especially now with new space, everything goes fast and very fast. So we need to follow that. This is the reason why when we created the Space Command, we also created a laboratory for innovation, which is the main task is to identify what are the innovations that are developed in all the different industries, but innovations that can have quick impacts on the capability of the forces. There is basically two parts in the innovation. The part of innovation that will improve the degree of maturity of the technology, and there is a part of innovation that will bring proof of concept. And this is this part that we are fully interested in, identified what the proof of concept that can have a direct link on the capability of the Space Command. We've got a very good example on this topic, which is Tutatis, which is a program that has been developed by the Innovation Agency, which is satellites to perform action in the low orbit. And this is a very good example because it marries new space company with a legacy company, which is MBDA. This is not a company which is dedicated to space, but we can say that MBDA is a kind of a very big company with a very strong industrial process. And this is a good example to see and identify what could be a solution to answer to the military requirements, bringing the flexibility of the new space with the knowledge and all the industrial process mastered by I would say, a legacy company. The second challenge that we have, that when it's about innovation, is how to scale up innovation, how to go from a prototype to an operational program. And this is something that I would say our procurement agency process is not very efficient at the present moment. We are strongly working on this topic because basically we've got a process for small program, not very expensive. We are very smart and strong process for very big program, but in the middle this is very difficult, and this is the reason why we have difficulties to go from prototype to operational requirements, and we have difficulty to finance, I would say, startup to scale up progressively, and to be able to go from prototype, which is demonstration of technology, to an operational program which has to answer to military requirements. This is also something that we need to work on, which is a duality. Space is by essence a dual domain, and we can say that the civilian part of space is basically giving the pace of innovation. So what we need to work on is the trade-off between the good enough military needs to be able to comply with the requirements of industry, to be sure that there is a duality and there is a commercial market to the assets that we will to develop. So to conclude my points, I really want you to keep in mind that space is no more a permissive environment, and that is key, because when it's about military operation, this is very key for space, and this is very new. It's something like 10 years old. 20 years ago, nobody was talking about threat in space. And this is, for me, the key point that changes everything, because now, when it's about space military system, you need resilience and you need reactivity. Resilience will be brought by I would say the legacy industry, because they have got a process that will bring cyber protection, all these kind of things that won't be mastered at the beginning by the new space. So the good question, as you said, is not who is the best one to answer the military needs between new space and legacy space. The good question is how do we marry them to give the best answer to the military requirements. Because again, when it's about military operation, when you push the start button, it needs to work. And if it doesn't work, you will lose people.
Thank you very much, Colonel. I hear that both legacy and new space domain are essential to build an effective space defense strategy, and that resilience and reactivity are the fundament of any program in the French Space Command and maybe in other European countries.